Serving today's community. Preparing for tomorrow's opportunities. Here's what's in the works.
If you know a little bit about the history of the Kent Valley, it was a lot of farming industries and a lot of farming in the valley here, a lot of hop farms. And prior to about 1960, there were really, levees were kind of built by the farmers just to keep the floodwaters out of their own fields. We don't have a lot of paperwork on how they were constructed because they were built years and years ago and they weren't built by any current construction standards. They were just built by the farmers who had some dirt and dumped it over there, and they worked quite well. They've worked quite well for many, many years. They've really developed into this safety net for all of the manufacturing and warehousing industry that we have here in the valley. The Howard Hanson Dam was constructed in 1962, and at that time it provided a lot of security for the flooding here. They were able to hold back those annual spring and winter flood flows that came down through the valley. And prior to the construction of the dam, washed out a lot of the valley. That's why there was no development here in the valley. It was farms. And while that flooding brought good soil for farming, it didn't allow the development. So like with the construction of the Howard Hanson Dam, it opened up this entire valley to development. A couple of years ago, the Howard Hanson Dam had a problem. They noticed some leaks that were occurring on one of the sides of the levee. And as a result of that, there was a little bit of concern through the valley cities that they were not going to be able to hold back the normal amount of water that they would in case a flood came. Many of you remember Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Rita. They happened about 10 years ago. And as a result of those hurricanes, the FEMA and the Corps of Engineers got out of the business of flood accreditation. What they did is they came by nationwide and said, if you don't have paperwork showing that your levees meet the criteria of the federal government as far as levees are concerned, as far as FEMA is concerned, they don't exist. And FEMA remapped the entire country as levees not existing. The levees do exist, they do provide some protection, but it was kind of a knee-jerk reaction to Katrina and Hurricane Rita. They got really a black eye because of their response to that, and they had a lot of failures in New Orleans, which we're all very familiar with. A lot of levees there failed. So they really got overly conservative, I would say, and said nationwide, we've got to step back and take a look at all the levees nationwide and find out what do we really have. Now, that's a big deal here in the Green River Valley because we have 12 miles of levees within the city limits of Kent. And as a result of FEMA remapping everything, the entire Kent Valley here was remapped as being in the floodplain, which, as you can imagine, is very critical and very big deal for the businesses along here. Because as a result of being remapped, they now need flood insurance, and it also has restricted their ability to redevelop their property. So this is a very big deal for the economic development of the city of Kent, especially here in the valley. And when I talk about the city of Kent, I also mean the city of Tukwila and the city of Renton, because we're all tied together within the same floodplain. We all have the same river flowing through our city, so it's very important for all of the jurisdictions. That's why, as part of this levee accreditation process, we've been working with the other jurisdictions. Even though we're within the city limits here of Tukwila, Kent is very interested in this because a levee breach here floods Tukwila and goes all the way back down within the city limits of Kent and beyond, way down. Even those people that live on the Kent, East Hill, and West Hill should be interested in having safe levees because most of those drive into the valley to get to Interstate 167 so that they can get to Seattle or Tacoma to get to work, or get across the valley to even from East Hill to West Hill. So even though you live on the East Hill or West Hill, it's very important. If you come through the valley, the levees are very important for your, so that you can continue living the way you live. So it's very important for everyone within the city limits, not just those who live here and work here in the valley. We started in about 2008 to reaccredit these levees because we saw the impact that FEMA's decision had on the economic development here in the valley. We put together a huge effort to reaccredit these levees, and we hired outside consultants and were successful in getting money from the state legislature. We've worked closely with the King County Flood Control District. the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the Muckleshoot Tribe, the Washington State Department of Ecology. So it's really been a group effort amongst many jurisdictions. We've done about $30 million worth of improvements. We still have a little bit more to do. There's a couple more sections that we still have to work on. And again, we have to tie it all together in one long chain. So there's some additional work we have to do there. But the $30 million has come from a variety of sources. I'd mentioned earlier that the Washington State Legislature pitched in $10 million in the Horseshoe Bend levy. They also put in an additional $17 million on the Briscoe-Des-Moines levy that you have here. We've also received some additional funding for the Boeing levy from the state legislature and for the Hawley Road and Foster Park levies from the state legislature. And also the King County Flood Control District has put in about $1 million for this segment of levee. FEMA is only concerned with the 100-year flood. They've set a nationwide standard of 100-year flood is what they're going to certify levees to. Basically what that means is in any given year, you have a 1 in 100 chance of seeing that flood occur. So basically if you had a dice that had 100 sides on it, what are the odds of you rolling a 1? You roll a 1. You could theoretically, statistically, have 200-year storms or 100-year floods year to year. It's all statistics, but that's why we want to go a little bit higher, so that if you had a 500-sided dice and rolled it, how many times you can come up with 1? A lot less than you would with a 100-sided dice. So again, it's really just statistics and them gathering data, and it's really just probability. We've worked primarily so far just on the east side, those 12 miles, because that protects almost all of the city. The ones on the west side don't protect as much, but we'll be working on them in the future. As you look around here, you can see that a lot of the warehouses are very close to the levee, very close to the water. So we didn't have the luxury of being able to move back far enough to build an earthen levee. That's why the sheet piles were a very economic solution to the problem that we faced here. The sheet piles some of them are up to 50 feet deep. So they go down quite a ways. We have to get down deep enough to be below the level of what's called scour. So as I mentioned earlier, the river wants to eat away on the outside bends. So we want to be down far enough so that if the river does continue to eat away, these sheet piles will be there to protect and not fall down or anything like that. So they need to be deep enough, and again, they were designed by a structural engineer who determined how deep they should be based on the characteristics of the river. They are Legos for grown-ups. Very, very large, very heavy. And they do fit together, and they slide into place, and they vibrate them into the ground, and probably Jason could speak a little bit more to that.
We use a vibratory hammer to push the sheets into the ground. We lift them into the air, we interlock the two channels together, and get it set up and level it, and then we put the hammer on the top and we begin the vibration. The hammer itself has 4 motors in it, and it starts up at a slower pace, picks up speed, and then slows down as we're ramping down. And we use that particular hammer because we're so close to buildings and to keep the vibrations lower. We've set thresholds and limits for noise and vibration, and we work to stay within those limits. When we do peak or get near a tolerance, we stop the contractor, we adjust our means and methods, and we begin again and work our way at a slower pace. Kind of just making sure we stay within the limits and tolerances. The hardest part about driving the sheets is unforeseen obstructions. When you're driving the sheets, you can actually feel the resistance change, and you can tell it'll start vibrating and bouncing a little bit different. The sheet will tend to want to get out of plumb, and it won't want to drive real easy, and as you're pushing through, it will release itself, and it'll just start going down nice and smooth again. Once we drive the sheet piles into the ground, we backfill against the sheet piles with the special levee fill material, which happens to be clay. And that aids in the repelling of the water should it rise to the height of the sheet piles. The clay will act as a barrier to help push the water out, as well as the cap beam and the concrete barrier. We believe that they will not rust. They should be here a lot longer than we are.
As a long term, there are some maintenance requirements for maintaining the levees, And that's primarily done through the King County Flood Control District. It's primarily their responsibility to maintain the levees once they're constructed. Like I say, we've been working closely with them as a partner on these levee reconstruction projects, but there are long-term costs associated with maintaining these levees. The overall goal is to complete all of those little reconstruction projects that are needed, that our consultants say are needed to accredit the levee through FEMA standards. After we get that, we submit the reports to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and then they remap the city limits here, remap the city of Kent with those levees in place and accredited. And what that will show is that a lot of those areas that were in the floodplain before are now out of the floodplain. Not only is this the Green River levee, but it's also a very important recreation corridor. We have the Green River Trail that runs near the entire length of those 12 miles, and it's a very important recreation amenity for the people here in Kent, and we'll be replacing that as well. We'll be restoring that, and hopefully soon we'll get the entire trail open for good. And it's very important that we get these levees certified, and once we get them all done, we'll have the bike trail open. It will be a beautiful corridor and a safe corridor for everybody in here in the city of Kent.
Kent Public Works Department, providing services that bring our city to life.